I will never forget what I saw that morning. My husband, Carlos, was in the guest room with my daughter-in-law, Juliana. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a full scene of intimacy that left me paralyzed at the doorway. As I turned to leave, I saw my son Raphael standing in the hallway. His face was ashen like marble. "Mom," he whispered, "this has been going on for months, and there's something you don't know yet." But before I continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and write in the comments where you are watching this video from. We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. My name is Maria, I am 65 years old, and I thought I was living the best years of my life. Carlos and I built a small guest house in Tiradentes together that was finally starting to prosper after decades of hard work. Our son Raphael, 32, had returned from Portugal after completing his master's degree in gastronomy and was about to marry Juliana, a young chef he met during his studies. That Friday in September, the wedding was scheduled for 2 weeks from now. The flower arrangements had already been chosen, the menu finalized, and the invitation sent. I woke up early, as I always do, to prepare breakfast for the guests. Our guest house is small, only 8 rooms, but we pride ourselves on personalized service. The smell of homemade bread filled the kitchen as I put water on for coffee. Juliana had arrived the night before for the final dress adjustments. She was staying in the guest room of the main house, separate from the guest house, while Raphael would stay in his apartment in the city until the wedding. Carlos, who normally helped me with breakfast, was strangely absent that morning. He must be fixing a plumbing problem, I thought to myself. He was always good at fixing things. I finished arranging the fresh fruit platters and decided to look for him. The house was silent, except for the distant sound of voices coming from the hallway leading to the rooms. I thought maybe Juliana was awake and talking to Carlos about the wedding preparations. As I approached, I noticed the voices were coming from the guest room. The door was ajar. I don't know what made me stop before knocking. Perhaps the tone of their voices, perhaps an instinct I didn't know I had. Through the crack, I saw something I never imagined seeing in my entire life. Carlos was sitting on the edge of the bed, Juliana standing between his legs. His hands were on her waist, beneath the silk nightgown I had given her as a welcome to the family gift. They were kissing deeply, with a familiarity that suggested it wasn't the first time. "The guests arrive in an hour," he whispered, his voice hoarse in a way I knew well after so many years together. "We can't linger, just a little longer," she replied, unbuttoning his shirt. "Raphael won't be back until tonight." My son's name on her lips as she touched my husband was like a stab in my heart. I recoiled instinctively, my hand covering my mouth to stifle the sound that threatened to escape. It was then that I noticed Raphael standing silently at the end of the hallway, watching me. Our eyes met in a moment of mutual, devastating understanding. He knew. He had found out too, and from the expression on his face, he had known for some time. Silently, he gestured for me to follow him to the back terrace, away from Carlos and Juliana's ears. My knees were shaking so much I could barely walk. When we reached the cool morning air, silent tears streamed down my face. "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice almost unrecognizable even to myself. 3 months, Raphael replied, his voice calm, controlled, but his eyes revealing deep pain. I found messages on her phone. At first, I thought it was just innocent flirting, but then he took his phone out of his pocket and showed me photos, messages, evidence of meetings in hotels when Carlos was supposedly on business trips to buy supplies for the guest house, and Juliana was visiting suppliers for her new restaurant. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, feeling anger mixed with my pain. "I wanted to be absolutely sure," Raphael said, running his hand through his hair in a gesture so reminiscent of his father. "And then, when I confirmed it, I thought maybe it was better you never know, that maybe we could move on." I had already broken up with Juliana privately, but we decided to keep up appearances until after what would have been our wedding, to avoid a scandal that would harm the guest house. "But then what?" I asked, my heart pounding against my ribs. Then worse," Raphael said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Something that involves the inn, its finances, and a plan they have to get us out of here. The world around me started to spin. 43 years of marriage, a lifetime built stone by stone, sacrifice by sacrifice, and everything was crumbling before my eyes on a single September morning. "Tell me everything," I said, wiping tears with the back of my hand. "Don't hide anything else from me. I need to know exactly what we're fighting against." And so, as the sun rose over the mountains of Tiridentis and guests began to wake up in the inn we built with so much love, my son revealed the extent of the betrayal that threatened to destroy not only my marriage, but everything we had built over a lifetime. Raphael led me to the office in the back of the inn, away from the main house where Carlos and Juliana remained. My legs felt heavy, as if I were walking in quicksand. The office was small but cozy, overlooking the gardens I cultivated with such care. How many hours I had spent there, organizing reservations, planning menus, calculating expenses. This space that had always been my refuge now felt strange, as if it belonged to another life, another person. Raphael closed the door softly and took a large envelope from the drawer that was usually locked. I never opened it. It was his workspace, where he kept documents related to the future restaurant he planned to open after the wedding. "Sit down, Mom," he said, gently pulling the chair closer for me. His hands trembled slightly, betraying the calm he tried to maintain. Inside the envelope were dozens of documents: bank statements, contracts, business proposals, printed emails. Raphael spread them methodically on the table as I watched, my stomach clenching in anticipation. It all started when I noticed Juliana was extremely interested in the inn's finances, he began, his voice controlled. At first, I thought it was just professional interest, a chef wanting to learn about the business. But then I realized she was asking very specific questions about the property titles, the loan agreements, even about the insurance policies. He showed me a copy of the original inn contract. The property had been bought in Carlos's and my name over 30 years ago, when it was still just an old, abandoned house that we transformed with our own hands. Dad opened a company in his name 2 years ago without including you and started transferring properties to this new company, Raphael said. I felt the blood drain from my face. How is that possible? I signed. No, you didn't sign, Raphael interrupted softly, placing a pile of documents in front of me with what appeared to be my signature. He forged your signature. Look closely. I examined the papers, feeling my world crumble even further. The signatures were almost perfect, but there were small differences that only I would notice. The way I curved the A in Maria, the pressure of the pen on the paper. Why would he do that? I whispered, unable to comprehend the depth of this betrayal. Raphael sighed deeply before continuing. Juliana is not who we thought she was. She was never a chef in Portugal. In fact, she worked for a real estate company that specializes in acquiring historic properties to transform them into luxury developments. He showed me photos of Juliana at corporate events, wearing suits instead of the chef's aprons I saw her wear when she visited our restaurant. They plan to sell the inn, Mom. There's a proposal from an international hotel chain interested in this land. The value is astronomical. He showed me the document, a purchase proposal for 8.5 million reals. But the inn is our life, I murmured, feeling dizzy. It's everything we built together. For you and for me, yes, Raphael said. For Dad, apparently, it's just an asset to liquidate. And the marriage? I asked, reality hitting me in successive waves. It was all a sham. Raphael nodded slowly. Juliana met me in Portugal, but not by chance. She was sent to get close to me when the real estate company discovered the inn. The plan was simple: marry me to gain legal access to the family, help Dad transfer the assets to the new company without raising suspicions, and then, after the divorce, split the profits from the sale. And your father? I asked, barely able to pronounce the words. How did he get involved in this? I'm not sure when the romance began, Raphael said, avoiding my gaze, but from the messages I found, it seems Juliana approached him first with the business proposal, and then things evolved. I think he was already dissatisfied, perhaps bored with life here, dreaming of a luxurious retirement somewhere sunny. I remembered how Carlos had been frequently talking about friends who sold their businesses and moved to the beach or abroad, how he sighed when he saw news reports about resorts on paradisical beaches. I always considered these comments harmless dreams, never imagining they could be the seeds of a real plan. "And you found all this out 3 months ago?" I completed. I found a document on Juliana's notebook when she left it open. It was a report for her superiors at the real estate agency, detailing the progress of Project Mountain Inn. It had photos of me, you, Dad, detailed descriptions of our routine, of the inn's finances. It looked like a spy dossier. I closed my eyes, trying to absorb the impact of each new revelation. It wasn't just a matter of marital infidelity. It was an elaborate conspiracy to steal not only my husband, but our family's legacy. "What did you do when you found out?" I asked. "I confronted Juliana," Raphael said, running his hand nervously through his hair. "She denied it at first, but when I showed her the proof, she changed tactics. She offered me a part in the deal. She said I could make a lot of money, start a new life, open my own restaurant anywhere in the world." "What about Dad? Did you confront him too?" Raphael shook his head negatively. "I didn't have the courage," he admitted with shame in his voice. "I kept up appearances with Juliana, pretending I was considering her proposal, to buy time while I gathered more evidence and tried to figure out how to protect you and the inn. I planned to cancel the wedding at the last minute, claiming personal doubts, but I never imagined you would find out like this." I looked out the office window at the inn that Carlos and I built with so much love. Every stone, every floorboard, every rose in the garden told the story of our love, of our shared work. Or at least, that's what I thought. "What do we do now?" I asked, feeling a cold determination replace the initial shock. Raphael looked at me with surprise. Perhaps he expected me to completely break down. "Mom, we still have time," he said with a glint of hope in his eyes. "The final property transfer is scheduled for after the wedding. Technically, the inn is still ours, if we act quickly." "Then let's act," I interrupted, straightening my posture. "First, we need to talk to a lawyer today." "I have a friend who specializes in real estate law," Raphael replied promptly. "We can meet him discreetly in the city." "Good," I nodded. "Meanwhile, we need to continue as if nothing has happened. They can't know that we found out." Raphael looked at me with admiration and concern. "Can you do that? Face Dad and Juliana knowing what you know?" I took a deep breath, feeling a strength I didn't know I had. For 43 years, I've taken care of this family and this business. I won't allow them to destroy everything now. At that moment, we heard footsteps approaching the office. Quickly, Raphael gathered the documents and put them in the envelope, returning it to the locked drawer. The door opened, and there was Carlos, my husband, the man I had loved for over 4 decades, smiling as if nothing was wrong. "Ah, you're here," he said casually. "The guests are asking about breakfast, Maria." I forced a smile, a mask I never imagined I would need to wear with him. "I'll be right there, dear," I replied, my voice surprisingly firm. "I was just reviewing some wedding details with Raphael." Carlos nodded, his gaze briefly meeting Raphael's before returning to mine. Was there suspicion in those eyes I knew so well, or was it just my imagination? "Don't delay," he said, closing the door as he left. Ricardo and I remained silent for a moment, listening to his footsteps fade away. "It begins now," I murmured, getting up and adjusting my apron. Their game, only now we're playing too. The rest of that day passed like a fever dream. I served breakfast to the guests with an automatic smile, answered questions about local attractions, and predicted the weather as I always did, all while watching Carlos and Juliana interact with others. Small glances, seemingly innocent touches, secret codes I had never noticed before, but which now seemed obvious. How could I have been so blind? How did I not realize that my own husband, the man with whom I shared a bed for over 4 decades, was living a double life right under my nose? At 2 p.m., when the inn was temporarily empty, the guests had gone out to tour the city, Raphael and I discreetly escaped. We told Carlos we were going to check on the floral arrangements for the wedding. Another lie to add to the web of deceit that now enveloped our family. The lawyer's office, Dr. Paulo Mendez, was in an old building in the historic center of Tiradentes. He was a middle-aged man with keen eyes and a serious expression. He listened to our story with professional attention, occasionally taking notes or asking for clarification. "Mrs. Maria," he finally said after we finished explaining the situation and presenting the documents Raphael had gathered, "what your husband did constitutes fraud and falsification. The property transfers made with your forged signature can be contested and annulled." "How long would that take?" I asked. "Legal proceedings can take years," he admitted. "However, we can request immediate interim measures to prevent any additional property transfer." "And the money he's already diverted?" Raphael asked. Dr. Mendez sighed. "Tracking and recovering diverted funds is complicated, especially if they've been transferred to overseas accounts or converted into other assets." I felt a pang of despair. "So what do you suggest we do?" "The quickest approach," he said slowly, "would be to confront him with the evidence and negotiate a settlement. With what we have here, he would face serious criminal consequences. This could put you in a strong negotiating position." "I don't want to negotiate," I replied firmly. "I want my inn back. I want to protect what we built." Dr. Mendez looked at me with a mix of admiration and concern. "I understand, Mrs. Maria. In that case, we need to act quickly and strategically." Then he outlined a plan of action. First, we would file a formal fraud complaint with the authorities. Simultaneously, we would initiate legal measures to freeze all assets of the company created by Carlos and block any transaction involving the inn. "This will create a legal obstacle that will prevent the sale," he explained. "No serious buyer would proceed with a property involved in litigation." "And the wedding?" I asked, looking at Raphael. "I'm not marrying her," Raphael stated categorically. "But perhaps we should keep up appearances until we have all legal measures in place." Dr. Mendez considered for a moment. Postponing would be more prudent than abruptly canceling. A cancellation could alert them that something is wrong. I nodded, feeling the weight of 2 more weeks pretending normality. "And the police? Should we involve them now?" "I'll prepare the complaint today," the lawyer replied, "but the police investigation can take time. Our immediate priority is to protect the property." When we left the office 2 hours later, we carried a folder full of documents to sign and a detailed plan. The sky over Tiradentes, usually so blue, was covered by heavy clouds that promised rain. "Are you okay, Mom?" Raphael asked as we walked to the car. "No," I answered honestly, "but I will be." He squeezed my hand. "We'll get through this together." Back at the inn, we found Juliana in the kitchen, preparing what looked like a tasting of dishes for the wedding menu. Seeing us, she smiled brightly. "Oh, you're back. Come taste the sauce I've developing for the main course." I watched her with new eyes. Her beauty, which I had once innocently admired, now seemed calculated and predatory. Her Portuguese accent, which we found charming, sounded fake and rehearsed. How had I not noticed before? "It looks delicious," I commented, forcing a smile as I tasted a spoonful of the sauce she offered. "You're very talented, Juliana." "Thank you, Mrs. Maria," she replied, seeming genuinely pleased with the compliment. She was a consummate actress. "I want everything to be perfect for our big day. Our big day." The words echoed in my mind like an insult. "Speaking of which," Raphael said, playing his part with surprising ease, "we were thinking of postponing the wedding for a few weeks." Juliana smiled, faltered for an instant. "Postpone? But why? Everything is practically ready." "Aunt Concepcion had a fall," I quickly invented. "She's in the hospital in Rio. Since she's Raphael's godmother, we'd like her to be able to attend." Juliana frowned, clearly annoyed, but maintaining her composure. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Of course, we can consider a slight postponement. We need to talk to the suppliers, of course." "I'll take care of it," Raphael offered. "It wouldn't be more than a month." Before Juliana could reply, Carlos entered the kitchen. He was wearing the blue sweater I had knitted for him last winter. Seeing him wearing something my hands had created with so much love caused a sharp pain in my chest. "What's everyone doing here? That smells wonderful, Juliana." Her eyes briefly met his, and I saw what I had never noticed before, that knowing look, that silent communication between lovers. Raphael is thinking of postponing the wedding, Juliana informed, her voice controlled but with a trace of tension. Aunt Concepcion had an accident. Carlos turned to Raphael, surprise and something else, alarm, in his eyes. Seriously? That's the first I've heard. Why didn't you tell me sooner? We just got the call when we were in town, Raphael replied calmly. It's nothing serious, but she'll need a few weeks to recover. Carlos studied his son's face for a moment, too long, before nodding slowly. Of course, it makes sense to wait. Concepcion has always been like a second mother to you. The air in the kitchen grew thick with unspoken lies. I pretended to be busy wiping an already spotless countertop, unable to look directly at Carlos. How could he be there, discussing the details of his son's fake wedding with his mistress while planning to destroy everything we had built? I'll check the rooms, I announced abruptly, needing to escape that farce before my facade crumbled. As I left the kitchen, I heard Juliana say softly, "She's acting strange today. Do you think she suspects something?" I didn't wait to hear Carlos's answer. I hurried upstairs, taking refuge in the room we shared. The room where, for decades, I believed I was sleeping next to a man who loved me as much as I loved him. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed the tears to fall. Not just for the betrayal, but for the loss of what I thought we had, for the slow, silent death of a marriage that had defined who I was for almost all my adult life. As the rain finally began to fall outside, washing the windows as if trying to cleanse the world, I cried for the end of my last autumn with Carlos. The days that followed were a masterpiece of self-control. Every shared meal with Carlos, every forced smile for Juliana, every casual conversation about the future, it all consumed me inside, but I kept the facade perfectly intact. At the same time, Raphael and I worked discreetly with Dr. Mendez to put our plan into action. The documents were filed with the court the following Monday. Precautionary measures were requested to block any transaction involving the N. My name was removed as a signatory from all joint bank accounts, preventing Carlos from continuing to use my forged signature. A formal fraud complaint was filed with the police. Meanwhile, life at the N continued. Guests arrived and departed, oblivious to the drama unfolding beneath the surface of our apparent family harmony. Juliana continued her wedding preparations, seemingly accepting the postponement, although I noticed her growing unease. She made frequent calls in private, always speaking in a low voice. One afternoon, 7 days after our discovery, I was organizing sheets in the linen closet when I heard voices coming from the guest room. The door was closed, but the walls of the old house were not as thick as Carlos and Juliana seemed to believe. "They're acting strange," Juliana was saying, her voice tense. "I'm sure something is wrong." "You're imagining things," Carlos replied, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Maria has always been a bit absent-minded, and as for Raphael, he's just nervous about the wedding." "It's not just that," Juliana insisted. "Yesterday, I saw Raphael putting away documents when I entered the office. He looked guilty." "What do you want me to do?" Irritation was evident in Carlos's voice. "Accuse my own son of conspiring against us?" "I think we should speed up the plan," Juliana said after a moment of silence. "The buyers are getting impatient. If we wait much longer, they might back out of the deal." "What about the wedding?" "To hell with the wedding. It was just a means to an end. We can cancel, invent some excuse. The important thing is to finalize the sale before something goes wrong." My heart raced. They were planning to act faster than we had anticipated. I silently moved away from the closet and went downstairs to find Raphael, who was reviewing the reservation book at the reception. "We need to call Dr. Mendez now," I whispered after telling him what I heard. "They're going to try to sell the inn immediately." Raphael grabbed the phone and went out to make the call in private. He returned 15 minutes later, relief visible on his face. "The precautionary measures were approved this morning," he informed in a low voice. "The inn is officially under judicial dispute.
any attempt to sell it will be automatically invalidated. My heart raced. They were planning to act faster than we had anticipated. I silently moved away from the closet and went downstairs to find Raphael, who was reviewing the reservation book at the reception. "We need to call Dr. Mendez now," I whispered after telling him what I heard. "They're going to try to sell the inn immediately." Raphael grabbed the phone and went out to make the call in private. He returned 15 minutes later, relief visible on his face. "The precautionary measures were approved this morning," he informed in a low voice. "The inn is officially under judicial dispute. Any attempt to sell it will be automatically invalidated."
And the police investigation is still ongoing, but the chief said he wants to meet with us tomorrow to take our formal statements. I nodded, feeling a mix of apprehension and determination. "So we're protected for now?" "Yes, but we need to be careful. If they realize we know, they'll run away," I completed, "with everything they've managed to steal so far." That night, we all had dinner together in the inn's kitchen after closing hours, as we sometimes did. I had prepared cod with potatoes, Carlos's favorite dish. It was surreal to lovingly serve the man who planned to betray me in every possible way. "It's delicious, Maria," Carlos praised, savoring the dish as if nothing was wrong, as if he weren't living a lie. "Thank you," I replied automatically, "your mother's recipe." Juliana watched our interaction with keen eyes. "You have such a beautiful story together," she commented, her voice sweet like poison. 43 years. I can't imagine knowing someone for that long." "It's a lifetime," I agreed, meeting her eyes. "We built every piece of this inn together, brick by brick. So much of us is in here that sometimes I think the very walls hold our memories." I saw a slight discomfort pass over Carlos's face. Was he feeling guilt or just annoyance at my inconvenient sentimentality? "Speaking of the inn," he said, changing the subject, "I've been thinking that maybe it's time to do some renovations, modernize a bit, maybe expand." My eyes briefly met Raphael's. This was it, the beginning of the trap. "What kind of renovations?" I asked innocently, serving myself a little more salad. "Nothing drastic," Carlos replied, vaguely gesturing with his fork. "But I've been talking to some investors interested in properties in the region. Tourism in Tiradentes is growing, and we could capitalize on that with some strategic improvements." "Investors," I repeated, keeping my voice neutral as my heart raced. "That's new to me." "They're just preliminary talks," he quickly replied, "nothing concrete yet." Juliana intervened with artificial enthusiasm. "It would be wonderful to modernize this place. Keep the rustic charm, of course, but add some luxury amenities. A spa, maybe a heated pool." "A pool would completely change the character of the inn," I calmly observed. "We've always prided ourselves on offering an authentic mountain experience, not a generic resort." "Times change, Mom," Juliana said, with a slightly condescending tone that made my fingers clench the fork harder. "Today's tourists want comfort and luxury, even in rustic destinations." "Interesting that you're so sure about what tourists want," I replied, allowing a bit of my true voice to show through. "Considering you're a chef, not a hospitality expert." A brief, uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Raphael cleared his throat. "Actually, I was thinking," he said, joining the game, "that maybe we should consider registering the inn as a historical heritage site. The building is over 100 years old, and that could give us tax benefits in addition to protecting its original architecture." I saw momentary panic in Carlos's and Juliana's eyes before both controlled their expressions. "Historical heritage," Carlos shook his head. "That would bring all sorts of restrictions on what we can do with the property. It sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare." "I think it's a fascinating idea," I insisted, supporting my son. "After all, we want to preserve what we've built here, don't we, for future generations?" Carlos looked at me for a long time, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes that reminded me of the man I used to love, a hesitation, perhaps even regret. But it disappeared so quickly that I questioned whether it had truly existed. "Of course," he finally said,
we can explore all options. After dinner, while Juliana offered to wash the dishes, another small role in her elaborate performance as the perfect daughter-in-law, Carlos called me to walk in the garden. The night was cold and stars speckled the dark sky over the mountains. "You've been distant lately," he commented as we walked among the rose bushes I had planted decades ago. "I have been," I replied, watching my breath form small clouds in the cold air. "Maybe I'm just tired. Organizing a wedding is exhausting." "It's more than that." He stopped, turning to face me. In the dim moonlight, his face looked older, more marked by the lines of time. "You're different, more reserved." "People change, Carlos," I replied softly. "Sometimes we discover things that transform us." "What things?" There was a note of apprehension in his voice now.
For a moment, I considered confronting him right there, in the garden I planted with my own hands, tearing off his mask and forcing him to face his lies. But it wasn't the right time. The plan wasn't complete. "Nothing specific," I replied, glancing away at the distant mountains. "Just the weight of the years, perhaps. It makes us think about what truly matters in life." He nodded slowly, seemingly momentarily relieved, but still suspicious. "You know I love you, don't you?" The words that for so many decades had been my comfort and joy now sounded hollow and false. It was like hearing an actor poorly recite his lines. "I know," I lied, the words bitter on my tongue. That night, lying beside Carlos in the bed we had shared for almost half a century, I stayed awake listening to his breathing. How was it possible to sleep so peacefully next to someone while planning to destroy everything that person loved? What kind of emptiness existed within him that allowed for such duplicity? And even more disturbing, what did it say about me that I hadn't noticed the falsehood growing beside me all these years? The next morning, Rafael and I left early for our meeting with Detective Rodriguez at the local police station. He was a corpulent man with keen eyes and an expression that suggested he had seen every possible kind of human deception. Forgery, document fraud, misappropriation of assets, he enumerated after examining our documents. "We have enough elements to initiate a formal investigation." "How long will this take?" I asked, aware that time was running out. "Financial investigations are complex, Mrs. Maria," he replied honestly. "They would normally take weeks, maybe months, but considering the circumstances and the possibility of the suspects trying to leave the country, we can expedite the process." "They plan to finalize the sale soon," Rafael informed him, "possibly in the next few days." The detective nodded gravely. "In that case, we will need to act quickly. I have two options for you." He explained that we could proceed with the more cautious approach, continue the investigation discreetly, gathering more evidence to build a stronger case. Or we could opt for immediate intervention, with the police appearing at the guest house to formally summon Carlos and Juliana, signaling that their activities were being investigated. The second option could alert them, causing them to destroy evidence or try to flee, the detective warned. On the other hand, it could prevent them from completing the sale. Rafael and I looked at each other, weighing our options. "I think we already have legal measures blocking any property transaction," I finally said. "Yes," the detective confirmed, "but determined people can find loopholes, false documents, unregistered transfers. I've seen it all." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. On one hand, the idea of Carlos and Juliana being officially confronted for their actions had a certain appeal, a form of immediate justice. On the other, if they were alerted prematurely, they could escape with the money they had already diverted. "We will continue with the discreet investigation," I finally decided, "but with maximum urgency. Meanwhile, we will maintain the facade at home." "Are you sure you can do it, Mom?" Rafael asked, concern evident in his voice. "Continue living with them pretending you don't know anything?" "I built that guest house with my own hands," I replied, raising my chin. "I can endure a few more days of lies to save it."
On the way back, Raphael drove in silence, absorbed in his own thoughts. The mountains around Tiradentes were partially covered in mist, creating an ethereal and melancholic landscape that perfectly matched my state of mind. "What are you thinking about?" I finally asked. Raphael sighed deeply. "About how we never truly know people, not even the closest ones." "Your father wasn't always like this," I said, surprising myself with my own need to defend the man who betrayed me so completely. "There was a time when he truly loved the guest house, when the dream was as much his as mine." "When do you think he changed?" I reflected on the question, trying to identify the moment my husband began to distance himself, to dream of another life. "Maybe when the guest house really started to succeed, about 5 years ago," I replied slowly. "Paradoxically, the more we prospered, the less satisfied he seemed, as if the realized dream had lost its shine." Raphael nodded, understanding. "And Juliana, how did you not notice anything?" The question hurt, but it was fair. How did I not notice the betrayal happening right under my nose?
I think when you live with someone for so long, you start to see them through a lens you've created yourself, I replied after a moment. You no longer see the real person, but the version of them that exists in your mind. And as for Juliana, I shook my head. She played the role of the loving daughter-in-law perfectly. I wanted to believe you had found someone special. When we arrived at the inn, we found an unfamiliar car parked at the entrance, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. Raphael and I exchanged apprehensive glances before entering. In the living room, Carlos was sitting with 2 men in suits, documents scattered across the coffee table. Upon seeing us, he quickly stood up, a look of guilty surprise on his face. "Maria, Raphael, I didn't expect you back so soon." "Clearly," I replied, observing the papers on the table. "Are we interrupting something?" One of the men, tall, perfectly trimmed gray hair, impeccable suit, stood up and extended his hand. "Mrs. Pereira, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Marcelo Barros from Horizonte Empreendimentos." I shook his hand mechanically, feeling a chill. "Horizonte Empreendimentos? Yes, we are discussing some investment possibilities for the property," he explained smoothly. "Your husband mentioned that you were considering a substantial renovation." "Oh, really?" I looked directly at Carlos, who seemed to be trying to communicate something with his eyes, a silent plea for me to play along. "How interesting. I don't recall us finalizing that decision." The second man, younger and with a calculating expression, intervened. "Actually, madam, we are proposing a complete partnership. Horizonte would take over the management of the property, transforming it into a luxury boutique resort, while you would retain a minority stake." "Minority stake?" I repeated slowly. "In the inn I built from scratch?" The air in the room grew tense. Raphael stepped closer, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. "Gentlemen," he said with surprising calm, "I appreciate your interest in our family business, but I'm afraid there's a misunderstanding. The inn is not for sale, nor are we looking for external partners at this time." Marcelo Barros seemed genuinely surprised. "Your father led us to believe that the family was united in this decision." "My father," Raphael replied coldly, "does not speak for the entire family." Carlos shifted uncomfortably, clearly unprepared for this confrontation. "Raphael, Maria, can we discuss this in private? Mr. Barros and Mr. Mendoza traveled from the capital especially for this meeting." "I regret the inconvenience," I replied, my voice firm, "but as my son said, there's nothing to discuss. The inn is not for sale." At that moment, Juliana entered the room, looking momentarily disconcerted upon seeing us there. She quickly recovered, smiling gracefully. "Ah, you've already met the Horizonte representatives? Isn't it a fascinating proposal?" The naturalness with which she inserted herself into the conversation, assuming the role of co-owner with the right to opine on the future of the inn, ignited something within me. A rage that had been slowly smoldering now threatened to erupt into open flames. "Juliana," I said, my voice dangerously calm,
"Why don't you show the gentlemen our garden while I prepare some coffee? I'm sure they'd like to see the property before they leave." She hesitated, her eyes quickly going to Carlos, who nodded discreetly. "Of course," she replied, regaining her composure. "This way, gentlemen." As soon as they left, I turned to Carlos, not even bothering to hide my fury. "How dare you try to sell our inn behind my back?" Carlos raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Maria, it's not what it looks like. We're just exploring options. Nothing has been decided." "Don't lie to me." The words came out louder than I intended. They talked about a minority stake. That's not exploring options. That's negotiating the sale of our home. Raphael stepped between us, ever the mediator. "Dad, what's really going on here?" Carlos ran a hand over his face, looking suddenly much older and more tired. "It's complicated." "Then explain," Raphael demanded, "because it looks pretty simple from our point of view. You're trying to sell the inn without consulting Mom, the legal co-owner." For a moment, I thought Carlos was going to confess everything. I saw the struggle in his eyes, the weight of the lies finally becoming too heavy. But then, like a curtain closing, the vulnerability vanished, replaced by a cold determination. "I'm doing what's best for all of us," he declared. "This inn has consumed our lives for decades. We're getting old, Maria. I don't want to spend my last years changing sheets and fixing plumbing."
"So that's it?" I asked incredulously. "You're tired? So you decide to throw away everything we've built?" "It's not throwing away," he insisted. "It's evolving. Horizonte's offer is generous. Enough money for us to retire comfortably, maybe even buy that beach house you always wanted." I shook my head, marveling at his ability to distort reality. "I never wanted a beach house, Carlos. That was always your dream, not mine." Our eyes met, and at that moment I realized the extent of the chasm that had formed between us. It wasn't just about infidelity or financial conspiracy. It was about the fact that after 43 years together, my husband didn't truly know me. "This conversation isn't over," I finally said, composing myself. "But now we have guests to attend to. Unwanted guests, but guests nonetheless." I went out to the kitchen to prepare the promised coffee, leaving Carlos and Raphael in a charged silence. As the water boiled, I looked out the window at the garden where Juliana proudly showed the rose bushes to Horizonte's executives. Rose bushes I had planted, watered, and pruned over decades. The ease with which she claimed my work, my life, as if they were her own, was impressive. At that moment, I made a decision. The time for pretending was over. It was time to end this game once and for all. The days that followed were of an almost unbearable tension. After the departure of Horizonte's executives, who left visibly confused by the contradictory messages received from the family, the pretense of normalcy became even more difficult. Carlos was nervous, constantly checking his phone and making private calls. Juliana alternated between being overly solicitous with me and distant, spending long periods locked in the guest room. Raphael and I maintained constant contact with Dr. Mendez and Chief Rodriguez. The investigation was progressing rapidly, with forensic experts analyzing the forged documents and tracking suspicious financial transfers. Secret offshore bank accounts were discovered, concrete evidence of Carlos's long-term plan. On the fourth day after the confrontation with Horizonte's executives, I received a call from Dr. Mendez while I was in town buying supplies for the guest house. "Mrs. Maria," he said, his voice urgent, "we believe your husband and Miss Juliana are planning to leave the country." My heart pounded. "How do you know?" "Our investigators discovered tickets bought in their names for Lisbon departing tomorrow night, and there was a large transfer from one of the offshore accounts to a Portuguese bank this morning." "They're fleeing," I whispered, holding on to the shopping cart to steady myself. "I'm afraid so. Chief Rodriguez is preparing arrest warrants, but they won't be ready before tomorrow. If they suspect we're closing in, they'll disappear today." "What should I do?" "Go home and act normally," he instructed. "Don't let on that you know anything. Chief Rodriguez is sending an undercover officer to discreetly watch the guest house in case they try to leave before we execute the warrants."
I finished my shopping mechanically, my mind racing, trying to process what was happening. Carlos had not only betrayed me emotionally and financially, he planned to abandon me completely, fleeing to another country with my daughter-in-law and the money we had built together over an entire lifetime. Upon returning to the guest house, I found a scene of apparent normalcy. Carlos was at the reception, attending to a newly arrived couple. Juliana was in the kitchen, apparently preparing something for dinner. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary, except for the fact that it was entirely false. "I need your help with the bags," Carlos said when he saw me, smiling at the guests. "Our new friends will be staying in the blue room." I nodded, forcing a smile as I carefully observed his behavior. There was a nervous energy in him, a sparkle in his eyes that I recognized from other occasions when he was particularly anxious about something. We went to the room carrying the couple's bags. When we were alone in the hallway, Carlos turned to me. "I thought we could go out for dinner tonight," he said casually, "just the two of us. It's been a while since we had a moment alone." The unexpected invitation caught me by surprise. For an instant, I almost believed it could be genuine. Perhaps a last fragment of the man I loved trying to emerge. But then I remembered the tickets to Lisbon, the bank transfer, the systematic betrayal. "That would be lovely," I replied, just as casually. "But we have guests arriving early tomorrow, maybe another day." I saw a flash of frustration in his eyes before he nodded, accepting my excuse.
He was trying to get me away from the guest house tonight to facilitate some final preparations for their escape. That afternoon, I met Raphael in the linen closet where we could talk unheard. I told him about the tickets and the bank transfer. "They're going to run away," he concluded, confirming my fears. "Probably tonight, since the tickets are for tomorrow." "Your father invited me to dinner," I added. "I think he's trying to get me away from the guest house." Raphael shook his head, evident disgust on his face. "We have to warn Chief Rodriguez." "I already have. He has a plainclothes officer watching the property, but without warrants, they can't do anything unless they see a crime being committed." "Then we have to catch them in the act," Raphael decided. We devised a simple plan. I would pretend to change my mind about dinner, giving Carlos and Juliana the impression that the guest house would be free for any preparations they needed to make. Raphael would hide in the office, from where he could discreetly observe the main house. I would leave with Carlos, but forget my purse, giving me an excuse to return unexpectedly. If we caught them trying to escape or removing documents, we would have witnesses and the plainclothes officer to confirm their intentions. As night approached, I felt a strange calm envelop me. After days of pretense and anguish, the idea that everything would soon end, one way or another, brought a kind of peace. I dressed for dinner carefully, choosing a navy blue dress that Carlos always complimented, applying light makeup, pinning my gray hair into a simple bun. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long moment. Who was this woman looking back at me? She seemed simultaneously familiar and strange. The same brown eyes that had seen so much love and betrayal. The same mouth that smiled with joy and now tightened with determination. "You will survive this," I whispered to my reflection. "You've survived worse things." Carlos was waiting for me in the living room, formally dressed with a bouquet of flowers in his hand. Roses from my own garden, I realized with a knot in my heart. "You look beautiful," he said, handing me the flowers. "Thank you," I replied, accepting them mechanically. "Let me put them in water before we leave." In the kitchen, I found Juliana preparing something that smelled deliciously of garlic and wine. "Are you going out?" she asked, smiling sweetly. "Have fun. Don't worry about anything here. I'll take care of everything." "I'm sure you will," I thought bitterly, but only smiled in response. As Carlos and I approached the main door, I enacted my part. "Oh, I forgot my purse," I exclaimed. "You go start the car, I'll be right back." I rushed back to the bedroom, grabbed my purse, and then took a wide detour to the office where Raphael was hiding. "We're leaving now," I whispered. "Stay alert." He nodded, his face serious. "Be careful, Mom. If you notice anything strange, don't confront him alone." "I won't confront him," I promised. "We'll just stick to the plan." The restaurant Carlos chose was elegant and discreet, about a 20-minute drive from the guest house. During the ride, he seemed strangely nostalgic, recalling the early years of the guest house,
the difficulties we faced together, the moments of joy when we started to succeed. If I didn't know better, I'd say he was trying to say goodbye. We took a table in the corner with candles and a bottle of red wine that he ordered without consulting the menu. My favorite, I noted. The familiarity of the gesture hurt more than it should. Maria, he said after the waiter served the wine, I know things have been complicated between us lately. Complicated, I repeated, keeping my tone neutral as I took a small sip of wine. That's one way to describe it. He sighed, running a hand through his gray hair, a gesture so familiar that I felt a pang of nostalgia despite everything. I want you to know that, despite everything, the years we spent together were the best of my life. The sincerity in his voice almost made me waver. Almost. How convenient for you to mention that now, I replied, placing my glass on the table with a little more force than necessary. After spending months planning to sell our guest house behind my back, he seemed genuinely surprised by my frankness. Maria, it's not that simple. Then explain it to me, I challenged. Explain why you're trying to destroy everything we built together. He looked around nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation in a public place. This isn't the place for this discussion. When would be the appropriate place, Carlos? After you finalized the sale? Or perhaps after you fled to Portugal with the money? His pupils dilated in shock. For a moment, he seemed completely speechless. Then, slowly, understanding replaced surprise on his face.
You know, he said finally, not as a question, but as a realization. I know everything. I confirmed, keeping my voice low but firm. About Juliana, about the shell company you created, about the bank transfers, the forgeries, the plans to sell the inn, and about the tickets to Lisbon for tomorrow night. He visibly paled, his hand trembling around the wine glass. How? Does it matter? I asked. The relevant thing is that it's over, Carlos. Right this moment, the police are preparing arrest warrants for you and Juliana. The accounts have been frozen. The inn is under judicial protection against any attempt to sell. He looked like a man drowning, desperately trying to find something to hold on to. Maria, you don't understand. I was going to tell you everything eventually. I was going to give you a fair share. A fair share? I interrupted incredulously. Of what is legally half mine? Of the inn we built together with our blood, sweat, and tears? How generous of you. It was a mistake, he admitted, his voice breaking. I got lost at some point. Juliana came up with these ideas, these promises of a better, easier life. Don't you dare blame her, I warned. You are an adult man who made his own decisions, decisions that shattered our family. He hung his head, defeated. What do you want, Maria? I want you to think about Raphael, I replied firmly. Your son, whom you were willing to abandon without a word. I want you to face the consequences of your actions, like a man, not like a coward fleeing in the middle of the night. It's too late for that, he whispered. Things have been set in motion that I can't simply undo. At that moment, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Raphael. They are here. Juliana is packing. Police on the way. My heart raced. The message didn't make sense. Juliana should be alone at the inn, not they. Who else was there? I need to go to the bathroom, I said abruptly, standing up. In the private corridor near the bathrooms, I called Raphael. What's going on? I asked as soon as he answered. 2 men arrived 10 minutes ago, he replied, his voice tense and low. They're not the same ones from Horizonte. Juliana welcomed them as if she expected them. They are removing documents from the office and loading bags into their car. And the police officer? I just notified him. He called for backup, but said not to interfere until they arrive. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't do anything reckless. I went back to the table, trying to control my expression. I need to go back to the inn, I said, standing up and grabbing my bag. I forgot to leave important instructions for a late arriving guest today. Carlos looked at me suspiciously. Now? In the middle of dinner? It's an emergency, I insisted. You can stay and finish your meal if you want. A dark understanding passed over his face. You know something is happening at the inn right now, don't you? I didn't answer, just stared at him firmly. I'm coming with you, he said, throwing his napkin on the table and calling the waiter to pay the bill. The drive back was tense and silent. Carlos drove too fast, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I looked out the window at the passing house lights,
each harboring stories and lives we would never know. How many other marriages hid secrets as deep as ours? When we arrived at the inn's entrance, we saw the flashing lights of 2 police cars. Carlos stopped abruptly, his face a mask of panic. "Maria," he pleaded, turning to me, "it's not too late. We can fix this." "Do you really believe that?" I asked softly. "Some things, once broken, cannot be mended." I got out of the car and walked towards the inn, feeling Carlos follow a few steps behind. In the front garden, a chaotic scene unfolded. Juliana was being put in the back of a police car, while 2 men I had never seen before were handcuffed and leaning against another police car. Raphael ran to meet me. "Thank God you arrived safely. They were taking everything, documents, money, even some of your jewelry." "Jewelry?" I repeated, confused. "We found it in Juliana's room," explained Chief Rodriguez, approaching. "Apparently, she had been appropriating your personal belongings for some time." I looked at the jewelry a police officer was holding in a plastic bag. The pearl necklace my mother gave me, the earrings Carlos gave me for our 20th wedding anniversary, the ruby brooch that belonged to my grandmother. Small personal treasures that meant much more than their monetary value. Carlos remained paralyzed, watching the scene with an expression of horror. When Detective Rodriguez approached him, he offered no resistance. "Carlos Perea," the detective said formally, "you are being detained for investigation of fraud, forgery of documents, and embezzlement. You have the right to remain silent." While the detective recited his rights, Carlos looked at me one last time. There was something in his eyes, not just fear or regret, but something deeper. Perhaps the late understanding of what he had thrown away. "I'm sorry," he murmured, as he was led to the patrol car. I stood there in the garden I had cultivated for decades, watching my husband of 43 years being taken away by the police. The roses I planted with such love now witnessed the end of my marriage. A cold breeze blew, making the flowers sway gently, as if saying goodbye. Raphael put a protective arm around me. "Are you okay, Mom?" "No," I replied honestly, "but I will be." The months that followed were an emotional roller coaster. The case turned into a small local scandal. The respected inn owner betrayed by her husband, who conspired with their son's fake fiancé. Juliana was accused not only of fraud related to the inn, but also of embezzlement from her previous job. The 2 men caught at the inn were her accomplices, hired to assist with the escape and transfer of stolen goods. Carlos, after realizing the extent of the evidence against him, made a deal with the prosecution, confessing his crimes in exchange for a reduced sentence. I discovered he had embezzled almost 2 million reais over the years, hidden in offshore accounts. With the help of lawyers and the justice system, we managed to recover most of the money. The divorce was finalized in record time, given the circumstances. The inn remained entirely mine, as did the recovered accounts. Carlos was sentenced to 4 years in prison, of which he would likely serve less than 2 in a semi-open regime. One afternoon, about 6 months after that fateful night, I received a visit request at the inn. It was Maria Luisa, Juliana's mother, an elegant woman who had never fully approved of her daughter's relationship with Raphael. Receiving her on the inn's terrace was one of the strangest moments of my life. 2 women, united by the betrayal of their loved ones, sitting and having tea as if it were a normal social visit. "I wanted to apologize in person," she said after a few moments of polite but tense conversation. "I never imagined Juliana was capable of something like this." "Neither of us truly knew the people we loved," I replied, surprised by the lack of bitterness in my voice. "That is perhaps the hardest lesson of all this." "She was always ambitious," Maria Luisa reflected, looking at the garden. "Since childhood, she always wanted more than we could give. I thought time would teach her to value things other than money and status, but..." Her voice trailed off, and I saw in her the same kind of pain I carried myself. The pain of discovering that someone we love deeply is capable of cruelty and deceit. "How is your son?" she finally asked. "Raphael is well," I replied. "He has taken over the management of the inn with me. He is turning the pain into something constructive." What I didn't mention was that he had also started dating a young historian, who frequently visited the region to research colonial architecture. A nascent, cautious, but promising relationship. Life moved on in unexpected ways. "And you?" Maria Luisa asked, her eyes meeting mine with a shared understanding. "How are you, really?" The question took me by surprise. In recent weeks, everyone seemed to walk on tiptoes around me, as if I were made of glass, avoiding touching my emotional wounds. It was refreshing to hear someone ask directly. "I am discovering who I am without him," I answered honestly. "It's terrifying and liberating at the same time. 43 years is a long time to define yourself as part of a couple." She nodded understandingly. "My husband passed away 12 years ago. I remember that feeling, like learning to walk again." We talked for a while longer, two women sharing experiences of loss and reconstruction. When she left, I felt a strange peace. There was something healing in sharing pain with someone who truly understood, even if that person was the mother of the woman who had tried to destroy my life. 1 year passed. The inn not only survived the scandal, but prospered. Our story, ironically, attracted a different kind of tourist, people fascinated by the drama that had unfolded within those centuries-old walls. Initially, this morbid curiosity bothered me, but with time, I learned to accept that our story was now part of the inn's history.
One autumn afternoon, very much like the one when everything started to fall apart, I received a letter. The envelope bore the stamp of the penitentiary where Carlos was serving his sentence. My first inclination was to throw it away without opening it, but something stopped me. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps the need for closure. I took the letter to the rose garden, sitting on the bench where Carlos and I used to watch the sunset in the early years of the guest house. The rose bushes were now larger and more vigorous than ever, as if they too had found new life after the storm. The letter was long and handwritten, the handwriting familiar but more tremulous than I remembered. Carlos asked for forgiveness, not expecting to receive it. He explained how he gradually lost himself, how boredom and routine made way for resentments that grew silently, how Juliana, with her youth and ambition, represented not only desire, but a second chance, an escape from the mortality he was beginning to feel approaching. There were no justifications, only explanations, and in the end, a confession that touched me more deeply than I expected. Only now, sitting in a cell, looking at the same patch of sky every day, do I truly understand what I threw away. It wasn't just a marriage or a guest house, it was a whole life of shared moments that I will never have again. The greatest punishment is not prison, Maria. It's knowing that I destroyed what truly mattered and that nothing I can do will ever bring it back. I folded the letter carefully, watching the sun begin to set behind the mountains. Shadows stretched across the garden, creating complex patterns on the grass. I thought about forgiveness and how it comes in many forms. Sometimes, forgiving someone means releasing them from their guilt. Other times, it means releasing yourself from anger and bitterness, even if there is no reconciliation. I realized I no longer hated Carlos. The pain was still there, probably always would be, but the hatred had dissipated, replaced by something more akin to pity, not just for him, but for both of us, for all the years we could have had together if he had made different choices. A gentle breeze swayed the rose bushes, spreading their perfume through the air. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. Autumn was coming to an end, giving way to winter. But after winter would come spring, and with it, new flowers, new possibilities. I then understood that this was the true nature of starting over. It wasn't erasing the past or pretending the pain never existed. It was acknowledging it, carrying it as part of who we become, and still moving forward, allowing new gardens to bloom where the old ones were destroyed. I put the letter in my pocket and stood up, ready to return to the guest house, my guest house, where Raphael would be waiting to discuss the expansion plans we had begun to develop. The life I knew had ended one autumn, but another life, unexpected and yet to be discovered, was just beginning. And this time, it would be entirely mine. And you, what would you have done in Maria's place? Would you have given Carlos a second chance or moved on like she did?
Leave your opinion here in the comments. We want to know what you think. If this story touched your heart in any way, don't forget to like. It helps us a lot to continue bringing emotional stories like this to you. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, click that red subscribe button and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our next stories. Every week we have new accounts that will stir your emotions. Share this video with that friend who needs to hear a story of overcoming and starting over. Sometimes the stories of others help us understand our own lives. Thank you very much for watching until now. Your presence makes all the difference. See you in the next video with another amazing story. A big hug and see you soon.